Hey Alex, welcome to Yahacks FM.
Hey, yeah. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, sure. The only reason is I really would like to know what was your first computer.
I don't even remember. I
Whoa.
was born back in Soviet Union. It was 1987, and it was computer at my house because my mom she is a software developer since many years ago, and
Cool.
when she was pregnant, she stood home with me, and they managed to move the computer, and it was actually a big deal to move computer that days because it was really big and heavy.
Hey, so your mother did remote work in 1987, right?
Yeah, when it wasn't that popular.
That is crazy. So you
Because
you were like 40 years, no, not 35 years ahead of time.
yeah, exactly. And she used Fortran, as I remember,
Yeah.
something like that. So I had my first computer. I don't even remember what it was. I
But
do remember a few
what she wrote in Fortran. This what interests me.
One of the projects, as I remember, one of the projects was about the deepest well. You know, they drill wells here, like everywhere in Russia, they drill wells because they have oil. And one day they decided, and they have kind of like attitude to have biggest, deepest, largest.
Okay.
And one of the projects was about deepest well. So they drill the deepest well. It's even deeper than marine hole.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's over 11 kilometers down.
Okay.
And one of the projects was about calculating. You need to calculate everything to understand where the drill goes and whatever.
Wow.
Something about that. But it was like real computer science. It's not what we
Okay.
do now. It's not web applications. It is something that computer was invented for, to help people with physics, to
Yeah.
calculate things, and not to click buttons only.
But the question is it really invented for that? But I agree with you. This interesting project and lots of math because Fortran, there was Fortran is very good in math, so it was good for simulation of your drills. Very good. So you don't remember the computer, but this was maybe your first computer, the big one from your mother, right?
Yes. And I remember I was playing games a
Okay.
lot till maybe I went to school, and then it was not it was that interesting any longer.
Hmm.
So I don't play games any. I haven't played games for maybe 20 years by now.
Hmm.
So I
But
finished when I
if
was
you if you
8.
if you okay, so why you stopped playing games?
Because it
And
was too easy for for most people, for many kids like me. It was, you need to find a place where you can play because you don't have your computer at home, so you go to some certain club, and then it just, it challenges you. And for me it was too easy. You just go home and here you go, you can play. It's
so
like,
what you
it's like,
did then? So you stopped gaming, and then what you did?
yeah, it was pretty much computer science. That's what I started
Yeah,
with,
as
with
kid
Visual Basic.
but as kid you started programming, I assume, right?
Yes,
Which was the first programming language you started?
Pascal.
Okay.
Then Visual Basic.
And why you started? What was your first program you wrote?
A plus B.
Ah, okay. It equals C, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure.
And then what? Why? It was too easy. But what you wanted to invent or to implement or to write?
It wasn't. It was something like that. It was like I had clear understanding that computer science is gonna develop into a huge industry.
Hmm.
That was my kind of like internal feeling that
Hmm.
there is something big coming. And then my father, he was a teacher of math,
Hmm.
actually a professor at the university.
Hmm.
And my mom, she was a software developer, so I had no choice basically. I got my first degree in mathematics and became a software developer.
Huh?
So
And you enjoyed
I took two
mathematics?
ways.
And you enjoyed mathematics
I
as
love
kid?
mathematics.
Hmm.
Nothing to argue about.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the best part of mathematics. If you go to pretty much any industry, then you can, even computer science, you can argue if you need DTOs or you don't.
Yeah,
But if you go to mathematics, there is no empty room for arguing.
yeah, yeah. This is very true. So this is also what I like. But you studied math. I didn't study math, but there is a thing called differential equations. I think this is the right term, and this
Differential
is for
equations.
me. I I look at that and I didn't like it anymore because for me it was like this was the is differential equations the approximation of for instance an area under a graph, which is not is this one?
Actually, it is in computer science. We live in like in particles.
No, but
Where
wait a second. You're a
everything.
mathematician. Maybe this is wrong term. So imagine a graph, which is
Yes,
not a ellipse. Ellipse is just a graph, which
just
is
normal. Yeah, normal function. Yeah.
not normal function. It is something which is not cannot be easily described as a function. And then you would like to calculate the area under this graph. So there is a mathematic approach for it, and I think it's a differential equation. I think, but I forgot the term. But this is what I learned. I didn't like it anymore because it was
Integral.
integral,
Integral.
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 So and with the integral, it's okay. This is now this is like a soft thing. So I didn't like it at all back then. But for computers, it's great because with the integral, is nothing else like a for loop, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And in
Yeah, but back
mathematics,
then,
it is the same.
without the computer knowledge, I hated the integral because always math was 0 or 1, and then the integral comes, and this was like a rough approximation of something. You say, okay, now it's over, right? You can talk the entire day there in front, but now it's just approximation.
Yeah, it is actually not, because they have kind of like limits, and they show that actually they can calculate it absolutely precisely with 0%
Yeah, but
of
back then it was
distortion.
fluffy for me. With the integral,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was fluffy.
I totally understand what you're saying, because many teachers I met in my life, many professors, you listen to them, they say something, and then you don't understand anything. It sounds really overcomplicated, and then you go to some certain book. You Google for best book for example, differential equations. You read everything, and everything is so easy. So it depends on actually teachers a lot.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
most of them, they're trying to in my experience, they're trying to show them smarter than they are. So they're trying to make things way more complicated than they are, so
Yeah.
they look smarter.
Very like software engineering, right? So this is
Yeah, it is.
architects in software projects. Some architects are very common, share very common characteristics.
Yeah, if you cannot come up with new architecture, you come up with new terms.
Very
That's
good.
what you do.
You're very good. So we spent time in same projects. It seems like. So to listeners of the podcast, whenever I said differential equations, actually I meant integral. I confused both terms. This is what I always said. This is what I really didn't like. But as a computer came, so for me it was like it is a computer program, right? So this is the rough approximation, and the often you do this, the more precise it gets. So for me it was clear then. So. Very good, thank you. So I learned something. So perfect. So you knew that computer become important. So you started with A plus B, and now the question is, what happens then? What was your first interesting program or software you wrote? What was the idea behind?
As I said, my father, he is a professor, and they need to somehow prove that they're still in the right, in good conditions with their mental abilities, and they have some kind of like competition to stay like teaching in the university.
Wow.
I don't know how this called. I don't even know. But he said like I need to write a like scientific article, but I don't know what to do. So basically, the first program that was really program that worked somewhere, that brought something good to this world, was this program to calculate magnetic impulse, whatever. I don't even remember. Yes. I was at the high school at the time. So we did it together. So I have I have one article written, me and my father, or even two articles.
Wow, that's cool. So high school means you were 12?
No. It was high school. It was maybe 13, something like that. 13, 14, something like that. But yeah, I mean, like that was my first program that actually I did it for my father, and then I realized that I actually used in some, somewhere else where they do all this like magnetic impulse stamping, whatever they do. And then like in 2 years, I got a request saying like your program doesn't work any longer because it's new, like Windows came, and can you please build it for us again? I was like, really? Somebody's using this? I'm like, it was a big surprise for me.
This was actually not at university. Something similar happened to me. So I wrote a book a long time ago about Java, and I wrote a small framework in the book. And because I had no name for the framework, I called that SJF, Small Java Framework. And then maybe 10 years later, I got request for a company. They're using this framework in production, which really scared me because it was just, just like for me, just, something to do for the book. And which license it actually has? Can they use it? And I say, wow, for what? And it turned out that actually production lines are using this thing. But I responded, do whatever you like, but be careful. This was just, I wrote it for the book because my problem is I'm consultant. I cannot just give, to the book my real code. So
I don't want to be responsible for consequences you're gonna get.
Yeah, but the problem is now, if you're a consultant, you have to sign all the NDAs with all the clients, and this is actually not really good to to open source their code, right? So what I usually do, if there's something to explain, I rewrite it from scratch to show the point. This is also what I did in the framework. So this framework was half baked and just demonstrated the points, but it was in production, and they used that, and maybe they said, okay, maybe they violated some licenses. Like, don't worry, but never heard about them again. It was a huge company. Actually, it was Fuji or Fujitsu or something like this.
Fujitsu.
So, Fujitsu or Fuji, but one of nice companies actually, and really kind of them that they asked, right? So okay, we found that you wrote the framework, and I answered, yeah, you are the only one who uses the framework, right? Maybe so.
Yeah, I got kind of like this same experience maybe 5 years ago or maybe 7 years ago when I first started to write articles everywhere, like DZone, other playgrounds, wherever you can read my articles and find them. And then I got a request from some university student, and she asked me about if she can use my article for her whatever masters. And I was like, yeah, sure, it's like published in the internet. You can just take it and go. You can even say that you wrote this. I mean, like, I have no. And actually, she said like it would be great if you license your articles. And then it was a big shock for me because I thought by that time that you license only your source code, and normally you do it at Apache 2.0 or GPA or something like that. But then when you realize that in the modern world, you need to also license everything you do. Every outcome you need to license to let other people to use it without fear. That was a big shock for me.
Yeah. Hopefully your article was you didn't propagate the DTOs. We will come to that later, right? Because this would be a huge damage. If you write something about DTOs, it should be not copyright license. You cannot use it, right? This would be the license.
Yeah, it was about DTOs. I don't even remember what it was about.
No problem. It was just kidding. So, okay, I think no one can compete with you now because your first program you wrote was at high school about electromagnetic impulse in Turbo Pascal, right?
No, that was Delphi. But yeah, generally Turbo Pascal.
Delphi is great. Okay, I'm already afraid to ask you about your next software piece you wrote. What was it?
There is a Russian company called 1C.
1C?
Yeah, if you write it, it's 1C, but it is more funny that if you pronounce it, Russian would pronounce it 1S.
Oh, okay.
So it would sound a bit, improperly. But yeah, and it is a big company, a really good company. The first company that brought big IT business to Russia. It is kind of like Russian Salesforce, if you want.
Okay.
And that was my first job also with computer science. For example, you have some, they have kind of like box
But
products.
this was after study, I guess, right?
No, during studies.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it was like, I didn't live in a family that can, like survive without kids working.
and you studied computer science, right?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So what did you do for the company?
It's not a company. It's basically this one C thing. They provide, it's like Salesforce box product that absolutely won the Russian market for accounting software.
Okay.
And by that time, it was a nightmare with like black accounting, as we call it. So basically, people count their money under the table and show to the government, then they or nothing to not be paying tax.
Okay.
And the biggest business for that time was just to map one accounting software to another. So they have real accounting and accounting that they show to the government. And
Shadow
they needed
accounts,
to map
okay.
it. Yeah.
And this was the software. The one has created the mapping software or not?
Yeah, obviously. They couldn't do it officially. So basically, I needed to handshake these two things. And then this is the first time when it was a question how to handshake this softwares using like middle tier or at the database level tier. Because I started with the database and then I realized that it should be also business logic in the middle.
Which database was it?
That time it was their proper database. Later on, they enabled also Postgre.
Okay. So this was your first enterprise project. Which programming language? Delphi again?
No, they have their own. They have their own.
Language?
It's written in Russian.
The language?
Yes.
Wow. This is almost like Apple script. I think you can also translate Apple script to different languages.
Yeah, probably. I'm not sure, but it was like totally Russian and you couldn't translate it to English.
Wow. This is a DSL.
Yeah, kind of. It's a
or
big DSL.
RSL, Russian specific language, right?
Yes, something like that. It is like PLSQL but bigger and more specific towards account.
Oh, not bad. Okay, and what happened then?
Then I went to the United States and studied there, and then I realized that the world is big. It's really big, and lots of different interesting things happening.
And so you studied in US, right?
After I graduated from the Russian university, then yes, moved to US for a bit. And then I realized that the world is really big and software is growing. And if you miss one day in software development, you're going to need 2 days to just catch up. And then I started to move towards like classic development. And then it was C# first. Moving from Delphi to C# was absolutely nice. Then it was first web experience with Silverlight, as I remember.
Ah, okay.
And C# was just, it was
Microsoft Silverlight. This is like a Flash or HTML5.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Exactly.
When Flash died.
But Silverlight was huge. Even Olympics ran on Silverlight, I think.
Yeah,
right?
I believe so. So they basically Silverlight was good, and at the first stages it was just. By the way, I used Flash to write games, but it's just as a pet project. Then Flash died. Then it was Silverlight, and then I came to the world of Java, and it was just
because C# is already good. I mean, C# is a great language. Right?
It is. In many ways, it is. People gonna blame me. But in many ways, it was way better than Java. So, for example, what they call it, Linku. Linku to work with collections is absolutely amazingly.
Link. This was this Link framework. You can use SQL queries on collections on SQL.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was so readable. It was so like in Java you write like loops. Yeah. And there you just say what you want to get.
This was like Java Streams, but earlier, right? Like Java Stream, but way earlier and more powerful.
And more powerful. Even more declarative.
Yeah. But C# came after Java, and C# comes with lots of features which Java didn't have. So, for instance, C# had attributes, I think, and they are Java annotations before Java had annotations. So I was saying, C# had many features which Java doesn't have because the C# moved faster, but what I remember, C# was not as backward compatible as Java is. So the reason why Java moved slower is because of the backward compatibility.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, this is always the trade-off, right?
They didn't give promises that they needed to keep.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you open any Windows computer, you're gonna find like .NET Framework 1.0, .NET Framework 1.1, .NET Framework 3.5. 4 and you need massive number of this just to get something working. With Java, you just need to have Java of certain version, and everything else is gonna be working fine. And
now we are talking, right?
Yeah, I mean, I came to Java world, and at first it was
Which version you came? Which version you used in Java first? Java 5.
Before they changed serialization. So it was probably Java 5.
Serialization was changed in 1.4. You mean the exceptions?
Yes. Then it was like 1.3.
Broke the serialization because the new exceptions had, the cause, I think, inside the exception, so it was no more serializable. I think it was 1415. Okay.
Yeah, something like there. And I do remember that my first thing was it was software that was created before me, and they said like now you need to get this working on the new version of Java.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about backwards compatibility a few seconds ago, if you remember. So yeah. They said me you need to run this on that, and that was my first Java experience.
And you like this? Which IDE are you used back then? Eclipse, I assume.
Eclipse.
Yeah. And what was your impression? Because it came from Visual Studio, to Eclipse. So you liked the experience or not? Or
it was nightmare.
Okay.
It was nightmare, honestly. Visual Studio was just like few steps ahead at that time. And Eclipse, I remember that it really took me quite a while to make it like working, and that project was quite big, and I couldn't run it like I couldn't open many windows there, and then it also get broken, and then you like install another plugin that gets broken again, and then you remove this plugin, but it doesn't repair the whole thing. Then you remove INI file and this kind of like things. You need to. It's magic. What do you do? And then, by bless of God, it's working again. And then, I did 2 shifts in my life that I never had regrets with. First, I moved from Eclipse to IntelliJ. I never get back. By the way, in my software, by that time, I was the head of software development department, and I was the last using Eclipse.
This was in US. And which project was it? Roughly?
In Russia. It was in Russia.
In Russia, okay. And which industry was it? Was it still the accounting?
Obviously, oil and gas. Oil and gas industry.
Okay.
It's not many industries.
So you were in US and then moved back to Russia?
Yes, I had to due to some personal reasons. And then actually I worked with Java even before, but yeah, it was little projects. But that project, I do remember like about 2 things. One thing, I moved to IntelliJ. That was amazing. And another experience was moving to Spring Boot. This move from Java EE to Spring. That was also very good.
I have one question regarding IntelliJ, because what I was told, what I don't get in IntelliJ, why the shortcuts are so strange. And I went to the booth, and I remember delete a line in IntelliJ is Command Y or something. And they told me because it's Russian, this Y means something like delete in Russian. So most of the shortcuts make sense in Russian. Is it true that
Y is like Russian U?
Yeah.
U means удалить, but I think which means delete.
Удалить. Okay, this explains. Like in Eclipse was D, delete. In NetBeans was E, erase. And you are coming with Y. Y is like, yes, why it call you Y? And they say, okay, because it's Russian. So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's just, I'm quite sure that's just a nice story behind.
Okay.
I think they did it.
They told me the story. The story is that they started with File Explorer. And this were the shortcuts from the File Explorer. So this is what I learned back then. And then they started with the IDE. And this is all the shortcuts.
This is absolutely amazing story. Let me just retell it everywhere, because I'm gonna copyright you. That's absolutely amazing story, especially for Russian friends. Just to say that command Y is because it's similar to command U, which is command удалить, which is command remove.
Yeah, this was the explanation, and then strangely enough, I remember that. And now know that IntelliJ Y is delete because it's Russian. So from this point in time, I remember the shortcut. But you said from Java E. So I don't know whether you know me, but I use Java E all the time, and I really like the experience. But the question is what you did with Java E, because we use Glassfish, Whitefly, OpenLiberty, and the servers were very lean and very fast, and you made bad experience, what I understood, right, with Java E. So why it was so terrible what you did?
Probably because first, every experience is personal. So
I just wanted to know.
Others,
I'm really interested, because so far the guests like it, and you are the first to say it doesn't. So it just interests me, what was the problem with the Java E back then?
It was very verbose. It thought about every aspect of software development, making its configuration way more harder comparing Spring. And if you just start with, it was my start basically. They brought me like Java EE software.
But
I had
it's
a
an
look
old
into
one,
it.
right? It seems like old because I
It
was
was 2000, like it was 2008 or 2009.
okay, but it's still
Developed
old.
back in 2006, something like that.
Still old because what happened? This is funny. Recently, I delivered a talk for Chicago Java user group. It was recorded. You can watch it if you like. But
Yeah, I did.
You did.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, thank you. So and I showed a very old software which I use now as Lambda, and this was lean. You saw it's just Pojas, and the attendees said, okay, crazy that Java is so lean. There was nothing, and they were impressed. So what I assume, what you used was J2EE. This was the last version with lots of XML.
Yes,
So
yes.
the J2E came, I think it was over in 2005. As I remember, 2006, we got Java E6, which removed all the configuration, so I never use XML again. And you were just, 3-4 years old
That's
software.
what I'm saying. Like you cannot.
No, but
excuse
me, I understand you. I understand you right now. Yeah,
pass experiences to others because you get something. You have this bad experience with maybe good thing, and then you move to something. You learn it very well, and then you cannot get back. Actually, Eclipse is not that bad today comparing to what it was.
No, Eclipse was never bad. The problem with Eclipse I had was that in all projects they didn't use Eclipse. They use Eclipse with plus 500 various plugins.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Yeah, this was the problem. And if I moved from company to company, for me, I had, no kidding, I remember I had a Windows machine and maybe 30 different Eclipse workspaces with different set of plugins, which are not compatible with each other. So I have to keep track, which company uses which sets of plugins. It's like, you are all crazy. I cannot do this anymore. And then I discovered NetBeans. And this was just great because there were no plugins, it was just, software. But I was curious about, and interesting about Spring. So I used Java E without any configuration. And the criticism back then, you saw the code in Chicago Java user group, but the criticism was, okay, there is no configuration, and Spring back then, you had to configure everything in XML, and this is more explicit. So people ask me why there is no configuration in Java E. I say, okay, because conventional configuration. And back then, Spring just loved, to declare everything with XML back then.
Thousands of lines, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't like this XML. I just like, to put one annotation and it's done. And this is what you saw in Java user group. But I understood, so this was like maybe even Xdoclet. You know Xdoclet? This was an old generation tool which generated all the XML. Maybe it was very old. Okay, cool. So IntelliJ, I get it. So nice tool. The problem I have, I am consultant and I cannot just prescribe, to whoever what IDE to use. So I use right now Visual Studio Code, and it's getting better and better. It's really interesting. But I have the toolbox from IntelliJ. So I almost won another license on the Chicago Java user group, but I already have one. Okay. So what happens afterwards? So you did with Java with the, and then you moved to Spring Boot on IntelliJ, you said, right?
Yes. First I did the first move to Spring, and then I was absolutely the last guy in the department. I was the head of the department and the last guy in the department using Eclipse. And everybody was asking that days to buy a license for IntelliJ because it had no like community edition version that days. And I was buying to the second one, to third one, and so on and so on. So I was the last. And I was like, okay, let me try this. And then I tried it and stayed forever till now.
Yeah. And you like the Fleet, the new one?
It's hard to say. Fleet is, it has absolutely great experience for typing code. Yeah. But it doesn't provide even 1/10 of what IntelliJ provides.
Yeah, it is very similar to Visual Studio Code. I was just curious about your opinion because the new IntelliJ is completely different, and for me, it looks like Visual Studio Code almost.
Yeah. That's correct. That's totally correct. That's exactly my experience.
Yeah, I'm really curious whether it would take off or not. So this is this is really interesting to watch.
Actually, I use Fleet for example, Docker files for where I type a lot. And for Spring development, I use obviously IntelliJ Ultimate.
Okay. I use actually, there's a reason why I use Visual Studio Code because I easily can open in a folder, just for editing. So I can open, 20 Visual Studio Codes just as editor. And it also understands Maven out of the box, which is pretty cool. If you open a project with Maven, it just works. So this is what I like. Okay, cool. So what happened then? So in one point you started JPA Buddy, right?
Actually, I joined the company that I work for. It's a British company called Volmont. And that days, I joined a project for kind of like Uber, for a taxi. So it's kind of full stack taxi software for everything, for booking, for it was quite high load. So it was quite interesting software. And then I realized that in that company, they use their own framework that they developed, which is totally fine. Every big company should have their own framework. And if you don't,
I'm not that sure, but go ahead. Is your opinion?
It's sarcasm.
Okay, sarcasm. This I didn't notice because you are a mathematician, so this is not always obvious that it's sarcasm, okay?
Obviously, I would never start my own framework. Yeah, I'm gonna give a go to this story. And they have their own framework, which was very nice. It used Buddy, and it was totally Java, like complete Java. You don't need to write any line of JavaScript. You're fine with IntelliJ Community Edition. They also then we started our first plugin to tie up code together, because in code you not only have like Java links, you also have, for example, XMLs, and you want to switch between XML code and related Java code, this kind of things. So we started. That's how our first plugin started for IntelliJ. Then we started our own called CUBA Studio. The name of the framework was CUBA for some reason, and
this was at the British company. At the British company.
Yeah.
Okay. CUBA.
It's a British Russian company actually. So they had offices in Russia, they had office in London. So yeah, we worked together, and we said like, okay, let's make it open source. So basically, we did our path towards open source, and I joined that team who worked on that framework, and then we brought that framework to the market, and then we realized that to make people heavily use it, CUBA framework, we needed to provide better experience with coding, and that's where we started first plugin development.
This CUBA platform, I was asked a question in one Airhacks TV a few years ago, what I remember. Someone asked me, the Airhacks TV, this is what attendees ask me questions, I have a gist, and once a month I answer all the questions, but I don't answer any technical questions via email, so this is the deal, so I save a lot of time. But the cool story is, there are already 127 episodes, so the show runs right now for 8 years. And what happens right now is I look back 100 episodes and see what question were asked 8 years ago, which is funny experience actually.
Yeah.
But someone asked about the CUBA, and I look at that, and I found interesting that this CUBA is based on JPA back then. So I remember that. So
exactly.
But sooner we should reach, the episode where this was asked. So I will see what I said, but it's interesting.
Yeah, but obviously we had some problems with some wrong connotations with this name. Now it's renamed to JMix framework, but actually the roots of JPA Buddy came from there, and we started this kind of like CUBA Studio. Now it's JMix Studio to help people to adopt JMix CUBA that days. And we use JPA, as you said, and we had quite nice designer, but CUBA is totally invasive. If you take it, it's a framework, right? If you take it, you go with it until you decide to completely rewrite entire software.
But what was the business idea behind? Just fun, or why?
It was for ourselves. We thought that we are so smart to provide enterprise software faster and better than others.
JMix, you're right.
Now it's JMix. So basically, you take Java developer and they do everything. They do backend, they do front end. You don't need to cut tasks like by slices. You cut it by logic. You say it should be some certain module with these screens, this business logic, this like schema, and so on and so on.
So almost like a my point. What do I do? I see this is like a silo with business logic and everything, right? Like a microservice, top down, everything.
Yeah, but it's not a microservice. It's kind of like monolith. It's more like a Microsoft Access in Java if you want, or Delphi in Java if you want.
Cool. Yeah, nice. And JPA is a fork of that, an early fork, and you kept involved.
We used Eclipse Link. We used first Open JPA, then we used Eclipse Link. So
but why JPA Buddy Happened? Why? Because JMix was there, and why JPA Buddy? So what was the story behind?
Yeah, the story behind is that when you advocate for your framework, you understand that people see what's the window of your possibility to let people use it.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you need to have someone who you reach, who you know, who know about your plugin that it
Yeah,
actually exists.
yeah.
First, you already cut 90% of the community, even
Mm-hmm.
more.
Mm-hmm.
And then, even if they know, even if they like it, they need to have a new project.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they have a new project, they need to convince other team members. Even
Mm-hmm.
if they convince other team members, and so on and so on and so on. It's like another thing that if you heard about it, it was quite popular back in 2008 in the US. I heard it many times that people say that nobody was fired because of buying IBM.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
And nobody would be fired because of picking Java EE or Spring.
Yeah.
But you can easily be fired taking CUBA.
Yeah.
So this fear stays in the developers. So it was really hard, and that's really invasive. So one day we realized that why people use CUBA is because our development tools, because they see how easy it is to create like top-bottom software.
But was it popular somehow, or CUBA, or what? How?
Around maybe 25,000 developers, something like that.
Wow. And when they were in Russia, in UK, or where?
Everywhere.
Okay.
Paraguay, for example. One of the most interesting business trips with CUBA was to Paraguay.
Cool. And what they built in Paraguay with CUBA?
Core banking system.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, this is then huge success story, right?
It is just success story without huge.
I mean, 25,000 developers. You said?
Yeah. I mean, like it's fine. It's
yeah,
not
but I mean, this
millions.
is still. I mean, this is still for me is huge, right? So I mean, this is like a niche framework used by 25,000 developers. Niche. Yeah, but a niche for 25,000 is, I mean, is still remarkable.
Yeah, and it's open source. So basically, we did like tools to sell them. So basically, you show tools where people can create their like top bottom projects really fast within like a few minutes. For example, to replicate pet clinic, you need like maybe 30 minutes.
Cool. And this was a core banking system in Paraguay, runs on CUBA.
Yes.
So it's a Paraguay does not that well. Maybe it was a bug in CUBA, right?
Yeah, but
this was my joke now. So and then you created JPA Buddy to have some.
We went to many conferences showing CUBA, and they said like this is totally. But what you show, you cannot show framework. So this is the problem. You cannot show like this is the framework. You can show like paper. You can say this is 100 pages of documentation, and people are not excited about another 100 pages. So basically, another thing is to show them software development too, like IDE, like Delphi of today.
Yeah,
they say like you click, you get your like what you see is what again designers. You design your entities without deep understanding of GPA. You get your like SQL to migrate your database, like DML, to migrate your database. Everything is nicely put together, and you don't need to even think how all this works. You basically just follow your business. You develop your business logic. You get your software, and you deliver it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And
low code, we could say, right?
It was interface. To get a lot of code. That's what I would put it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you wrote a lot of code and it generated a lot of code, right? So this was
yes, exactly. It was like one huge code generator for some specific platform. That days we also thought about maybe removing our own opinionated parts of that framework, but we kind of like had fear that if we don't do it for our own framework, we're not going to control this part of framework, so it wouldn't be possible to create proper tools at the same level of like agility. That you get when you control both parts, framework and tooling part. And then one day we went to Bangalore, as I remember. It was a conference in Bangalore, and everybody people were very excited. They were saying, like, that's absolutely great thing, but can we use your studio without actually the framework? And we're like, no, it's not possible. This entire study is written for this framework. And they were saying like when you say this, they become like, then it's not gonna work. And then we said like, okay, it was quite long flight back. And we were talking with other team members, and it was kind of an idea. What if we still try to take some certain technology where we good at, that we understand, and try to provide very specific tooling for a narrow part, just to make it more efficient, to make developers more efficient and more happier. To develop with like this framework. And then we decided that obviously JPA that we used like for many years, we also like had our own fork, so we understand it very well.
And this was Eclipse Link.
That time it was Eclipse Link, but obviously we for other projects I also used Hibernate.
Yeah.
And before Eclipse Link, before CUBA platform, I also used Hibernate for many projects.
Okay.
So that was starting point. That was starting point. So we decided that we're gonna try with one developer. We started. We pushed it to the marketplace, IntelliJ marketplace, and then we realized that there are over 100,000 developers using it. So next day, you basically wake up.
This is a smart move to push it to IntelliJ market.
This is the only way, actually.
I wouldn't thought about this. So this is actually a very good point. This is IntelliJ is also a nice software distribution.
Obviously they have absolutely precise marketplace. For me, this kind of like business looks really interesting because it's like you have iPhone, and what would be your iPhone without Apple Store?
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing about every ID. Like what would it be without plugins? Yeah. And you as a company, even you're a huge company, you cannot cover to very precise level, to very little parts of the framework, some certain framework. You cannot provide this kind of this kind of integration. And again, when you take people, they for example don't use Quarkus, they use like Spring, or they use Micronaut and not Spring, or they use Helidon, or whatever. And if you like build one huge ID, ultimate ID, then people gonna use like 5% of it.
Yeah,
so it doesn't make sense.
So is JPA, so the studio for CUBA was based on IntelliJ then?
Yes.
Very good. So it was like IntelliJ plugin, because I wondered the entire time how you could build a nice experience with own studio. I mean, this is huge, but if you use the IntelliJ platform, this is what I understand. So this is easier.
We started our first plugin back in 2011, and then we had kind of CUBA Studio written in Vaadin as a separate web application. And then one day we realized that switching between windows is just like is the way to nowhere. And we moved all the. It was quite painful, especially for our users. Not saying about me. When we moved it to IntelliJ platform, and finally we got really good experience with that. And then one day in 2019, we decided just to try to extract one little part. But the main word, I would say, difference between CUBA Studio, the JMix Studio, and JPA Buddy is invasivity. It's not invasive. You can install it if you already have your JPA. You don't need the people to convince that JPA is good or bad. They're already using it. For some reason, they may hate it, but still use. And we make it pain for those people a bit less. For those who love JPA, we make them to love it even more. So obviously, it's all you don't need to convince people to use your runtime part. You say like you install it. If you don't like it, you remove it. You don't make your decision once and forever.
This is like your JPA Buddy, and the tagline is "Love Enhancer," right? So.
Yeah. It would be something like that. Actually,
So this is a new project. You said 2019. This was right before pandemic, right? This is like
that was decision to start it, and we started while in the middle of pandemic. Basically, we started
with JPA Buddy. So this is a fresh framework. I thought it was older. Okay.
It is. It is totally fresh.
And this is still for the internal use of the company, or you have a business plan now, or what with JPA Buddy?
We sell it.
Cool.
It is premium. We give you like most of the features for free, and then some of the features you get for a few dollars.
But this is no more used. This is no more used as the framework for the taxi company. It is like complete different vehicle right now. It's just like fork of that or what?
It's totally different. It doesn't have any framework. It just takes vanilla GPA and
but what happened is, your project was finished with the UK taxi company, and then you forked the code or whatever, rewrote it from scratch, and now the JPA Buddy and JMix is complete different idea, reason, goal, and whatever, right?
We started with this framework first that was used for that taxi solution. Mm-hmm. We took that framework, it looked nice, so we brought it to open source. We started this studio thing, and then we said, like, okay, our framework is great, but it's niche, as you said. And my personal belief was that we can reach way many developers than we do it now with the framework. So what if we just started tooling that may fit to million developers? Mm-hmm. Why are we trying to win like more and more people using the framework when there are lots of people who are using some framework? For instance,
sure.
GPA.
No, I was just curious to know how it happens. It's very similar to Rails. The Ruby on Rails was extracted after the fact from Basecamp. So they started, with a project first. They did notice there is something which is reusable, and this is how Ruby on Rails started. So it seems similar story here. You started, something to support the taxi company. Then you had the source code to say, look, now it is interesting. So then the CUBA platform happened, then JMix, and then you got the idea it can be even more narrow, more specific, and you started JPA Buddy, right?
But for wider audience.
Wider audience, and you are alone with JPA Buddy now, right? Or is it whole?
No, it's still the same company.
Still the same. Okay, company. Okay, and and this you can be distributable in a JPA marketplace. Okay, so what JPA Buddy does now? So why I need it, or what's the cool story behind, or how it works? So first, how it works. What is it?
Okay. Actually, we had before we started it, we decided to basically put 3 goals or many goals. Actually, we came up with 3 that we need to cover. First, we want newcomers to the technology to get into it easily, without reading tons of books, without reading tons of papers and web pages of biodunk.com or any Vlad Mikhalchi. Whatever. So we want them to just smoothly start with.
But Vlad's books are great,
very good. But
very good. But yeah.
But you need this is the threshold when you.
I was just kidding.
That you need. To read before you start, then you would probably go with something else where you don't need to read.
Yeah, sure.
So basically, that's just make the barrier to entry lower as low as possible for newcomers. Second one was to help experienced developers with remembering things. Actually, if you take junior developer and senior developer and ask them to write many association, they're going to be Googling the same pages because junior developer never heard about it. And senior developer already forgot about it. So we're helping newcomers to learn about it, and then senior developers to not forget things. And then make the code better in terms of following best practices, Vlad books, by the way, and his articles, and documentation. So it's together experience from many sides.
For short, your tool is a Vlad automation tool, right?
Kind of. From some perspective. Yeah. Then also we do quite a lot of boilerplate coding with GPA. For example, you changed your entity, you need to have a liquid-based or Flybase script. And we can do it automatically by comparing your entities with other entities set, or your entities with the database.
That's nice.
This kind of things.
Yeah.
Then also you may argue, but lots of people use DTOs, which nearly copy entities. So why they use this, as you say, anti-pattern, and even more spending a lot of time on it. So we make them to use this. We help them to use this anti-pattern without a lot of time waste.
Yeah, you are right. So how did discussion happen? I don't know why. I noticed it two days later. You had a fight or a discussion on Twitter about DTOs, and I noticed that my name came, and I couldn't even follow because it was already that long. And I say maybe I just
it was.
I invite you to the podcast because I cannot read the entire the entire stream of tweets. But I noticed that I'm with you. If someone forces you, to create DTOs which are identical to entities, a framework is great for it, because writing this by hand is just stupid. Yeah, this is the point. So just use whatever generates you the code. And my point is if you start with a project, DTOs, data transfer object, they have a purpose, and the main purpose in my eyes is you would like to transfer a subset of the entity or something different, or you would aggregate data.
Subgraph, I would even put it.
Yeah, exactly. But if you say it is always one-to-one, then I would always question why you need that, right? So this is the only thing, and this was the this was the short summary of the entire discussion. But interesting that you can do this. And what was this the main features? I interrupted you, sorry, for the JPA Buddy.
There are a lot of features. For example, we also use Mapstract. We can generate Mapstract interfaces. We can generate flyway. We can generate liquid base. We help with entities. We also have quite smart inspections showing you that your mappings are not efficient, for example.
Oh, very good.
We also show kind of like.
So if I do many to one eager, I get notice from you, right? For instance.
Yes.
Very good.
Or for example, which even more interesting, it's gonna be one-to-one, and then you have owning side. And then you have
on the wrong side. On the wrong side, right?
The wrong side. And then you put lazy on the wrong side, thinking that it's not going to be fetched. It will be. And we're going to show, for example, this like a little.
Even more interesting, if you're one-to-one and you have the foreign key on the wrong side and you have optimistic locks, version enabled, then you get the version increase on the wrong entity, right? So it's also interesting.
For example. So
cool.
little things that IntelliJ guys, they don't put a lot of attention on. We do put a lot of attention.
They are right. The IntelliJ guys have to stay away from best practice, I would say, from JPA. They have to provide the best possible, because too much opinion. And you have your own community, and you have your own opinion, and if someone uses JPA Buddy, they know what to expect, right? So this is exactly. But is a JPA Buddy works only in IntelliJ, or is it I could use it in Maven or whatever?
I mean, it is plugin for IntelliJ. It is
plugin for IntelliJ, okay. And okay, but this is my question, because what I suspected is what they are doing is that you hooked into Eclipse Link session. And then you're generating something, or you maybe have annotation process or whatever, but you are using the IntelliJ plugin functionality, the typing and whatever, right?
To parse code, to understand your code, to generate code.
Because what IntelliJ has is really great. They have a meta development environment. I forgot the name. They have a workbench for DSLs. You know that? This was a great name. You could write code generators with IntelliJ metadata.
Oh, yeah, I got no. We are kind of like really drilled inside of it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a nice name for that. So you can create and without IntelliJ on the IntelliJ platform your own DSLs. We generate code using IntelliJ tooling, and there is a name. They have a specific name for the platform, which I forgot.
We don't use. I understand what you're saying, but it's more like for
MPS. The name of the thing is MPS, Meta Programming System. So if you would like to create your own language, MPS is, for instance, you could use DSL. So, but you use probably a subset of that, the typing or whatever. And this is also the reason why
we directly use PSI, program structure, interface. It's nodes, we analyze it, all this kind of things.
And the cool story is why IntelliJ is so strong with the entire refactoring, because they understand, the now I forgot the name, the not source code representation, the internal structure of the program, so you can manipulate the AST. This was the name. AST abstract syntax tree. AST, and you can have transformation of the ASTs, and MPS is the second part, because you could have a DSL and then manipulate the ASTs, which will generate your code, which is exactly.
Correct.
Wow, cool. So, what interesting is I expected the JPA Buddy is completely different. What I thought is this is like, a Maven plugin which generates the code, but your story is really fascinating, because you are a plugin to IntelliJ, and you are somehow a successful startup, let's say, and which distributes the software over marketplace in IntelliJ. The cool story is most of the IntelliJ users are somehow advanced. I mean, they know already Java well enough to invest some money, which you get, which is also good for you, because if someone spends a few bucks, on IntelliJ, they also are willing to give you some money. And this is worth. I would say this is a perfect synergy, right? I mean,
it works like this. It works.
What are the paid features? So if I pay you something, what do I get out of that?
You're gonna get more generators. Basically, you will be able to generate, for example, differential scripts, comparing your entities and databases. And this thing is also smart.
So we'll create a flyway DB like the versions, the versions which are based on the prior versions with the diffs.
Yes.
Wow, this is a huge work, right? It is absolutely okay to do this.
Yeah, for $3.9, you can get it. Also generation for DTOs. These are paid, and that's probably
they should be paid. Very good.
Yes, and that's probably
never free. Please don't, don't, because in my project, everyone will have to DTO, so keep them, increase the price for DTO generation. This would be.
I can give you a little hint about this story that happened in Twitter, where we met, basically. It was one guy who was saying, like, this is the wrong practice. You don't need DTOs. And I was like, can you please show me an example of how you do it in the age of REST API, how you expose subset of your fields. It was for me, not for arguing, but for better understanding. Because if I don't understand my my opponent, then I would never be able to argue.
Yeah, I can tell you what they're doing, maybe. And the guy is nice. It's always, Twitter is a terrible place to argue.
I'm very sure that the guy is nice. I'm very sure that
that's why I didn't want it, to start the discussions. Like, I will invite you and let's have a nice discussion here. And this is the best. But what I'm doing is with microprofile Quarkus, Java, Helidon, whatever. So I have my entities have attributes, and if you use JSON-B, all attributes can be exposed via JSON. You are done. So nothing else to do. The problem is, of course, if it is not one-to-one, then you have a trouble. You need a kind of mapper. And what you could do then, if it escalates, you say, okay, we have this JSON structure diverges from the entities. In one point in time, we use JSON-P, and this JSON-P is like a hash map. So it is no more, an DTO. It is like JSON-typed hash map. And we map it more or less by hand, so we get it from the front end. And then it depends, because, in some projects, the attributes are depending on versions, or they are sometimes there and sometimes not there. So there's always a little bit manual work. So for standard CRUD, there's one-to-one relation. For more sophisticated projects, we use the JSON-P, which basically is hash map, which gets serialized to JSON. And
but then if you use GPA specifically with GPA, you have lazy associations, so you need to ignore them all.
If you do it by hand, of course you don't have, because you can decide when you call the lazy or not, right? So that then it just resolves everything beautifully. But it is usable. I mean, say this is there is no single best practice. What I can tell you, in simpler project is one-to-one. In mid-range projects, there is no relation between DTO and the JPA, because the DTO is one class which provides something which the JAX-ORS interface would like to have. And the JPA, maybe you have one DTO and two entities with one-to-one between them, and you just pick whatever you like. This could be the case. And sometimes we have even strange things. So we have one DTO with a view attributes which are hard, and JSON object inside, which reflects the flexible data. This is sometimes needed, if you have a Postgres database, for instance, it's very common to have one column with the JSON-B, so Postgres type native JSON data, and this is all, all the fields which are flexible. So I would say there is no single thing, but in my point of view, whatever you do, there should be a reason for it. No one should tell you, everything has to have to DTO. This is stupid. And DTOs are forbidden is also not okay. DTOs are a tool. You can use the tool or not. So this was my summary. So what we doing in my projects right now. So I never start with a DTO, but in all more complex projects, a view components have a DTO, but this DTO is usually different to the entities, or we have different problems. Like, from technical reasons, we need one, but this is, of course, workaround.
Yeah, I totally support what you're saying, actually. And I would just add something. Any technology, if you take any architecture, if you take any approach as cargo code, then
cargo code is fun.
Then it would be. I use DTOs because others use DTO. Like, for example, in Twitter, they use DTO and they built multi-billion business. They didn't build multi-billion business because of DTOs.
You're right. No, you're right. You're building the tool. If there is a demand, you sell it and done. I mean, this is if it is lean and helps the developers. And maybe in some projects we have crazy architects which prescribe to use the DTOs. Then it's better, to buy your tool, generates, architect is happy, and we have more vacations, right? I mean, this is...
Yeah, I mean, it's for tooling development. When you develop a framework, and as I said, I had my experience developing a framework, then you can put your own attitude of how you think things should work.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you're developing tooling, you just give people what they do to make it faster and even faster.
And more vacations. Right?
Yes, and even if tomorrow people would like to shoot their legs, then we're gonna be providing comfortable weapon to do this. It's tooling. It's tooling. You just let people do more efficient what they do every day. But if we talk about my personal opinion, then it would be like the following. So the general thing that you do all the time in web development is like REST API. So you have entity or any class, and then you need to expose subset of fields and subset of its relations also. So I want, for example, my student to be only with name, first name, like surname, and
not not the ID, right? So maybe the technical ID or whatever is hidden. Or whatever is technically is hidden. Okay.
Yeah. For example, I don't want to show his, for example, his phone number because it's personal information. I don't want to share it in this particular case because, for example, it's a board of best students. Or whatever. And then also I show his, for example, his whatever best friend, or I don't know, his major. For example, his major. And I want his major to come only with its name and number.
Subset.
That's a subset of, it's projection for entity graph. But how I get it? I don't get it right from the database, for example. I get it from the database somewhere, and then I process it, and then I want to expose it from REST API. Then how would you define this subset? What would you use for definition of this subset?
For me, I would use again in my boundary control entity, I would have one component, one package called students. Then the control would do the data. Control would be in JPA. I would get injected entity manager with persistence context and would just deliver the one-to-n relation between student and major. Then I would probably have, if this is more complex, another control which gets the student. Ask the major to get the name with whatever you said, and then create one DTO. It will be probably Java record if it's Java records with the structure, or because some frameworks support JSON serialization with Java records. If it's not supported, then a DTO, and this is strange. What I will do, a DTO with public attributes only, which will be actually just the attributes injected and just passed to because getters and setters and private fields, I don't care. Just public fields, whatever, returned, done, forgotten. And if this varies too much, because we can have a problem, right? Depending on the client, we have to show major or not. Then we have a problem, because then you have to to communicate, are you allowed to see the major and this is null, or you are not allowed to see the major and it's not existing. And in this particular case, I would use JSON-P, because in JSON-P, I can just live off the attribute. So the attribute is not even in the JSON, so it's not existing. So this will be the two major use cases for me.
Yeah, from that perspective, you say about dynamic behavior of the client side, when they can ask you for some certain subset. And for that reason, nowadays, I would use GraphQL.
You can also use GraphQL. Yeah, sure. But
that's exactly what I'm saying. And by the way, we support records. if you want to have, like, if you use Java 17 and you want to have a record, go ahead. We also support Lombok. If you use Lombok, you can have like very concise declaration of DTOs. But for me, DTO is not like an object. It's not like the point of that guy from Twitter.
It's a struct. DTO is a struct, right?
Yeah, obviously. But the reason was kind of dry. That's what the guy said. Like it breaks dry principle.
But he's right. What he said is, if you have entity and the DTO is always identical to the entity, there is no point if having DTO. And then it's not dry because you are repeating yourself, you know? His point was, he was right, that if you have entity and your DTO is always identical to the entity, why we have the DTO in the first place? So this was just a discussion. And he's right, this is not dry because you repeat it yourself. But there could be reasons to do that. Technical reasons, architects and whatever. I would always question that because I say, okay, why you're doing this? If you deliver me an answer, I'm fine with it. It should be understandable, right? So that's what I'm saying. But he was right and you were right. And I just listened.
My point was that, yes, it breaks dry, but you will break it anyways. There is no other implementation than just repeat yourself once again. And then
except it is one-to-one, you can just return the entire entity and then you're done.
Exactly.
So this is what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. Surely. This is what I use. This is what he knows, what I'm propagating. Before you create a DTO, just return the entire entity and you are done. And if you have to provide a subset, then think about DTO, right?
There is one reason that I heard against your approach is that you get this control. You get it. For example, you have like a larger software, and then I'm not advocating about that. I'm just saying something I heard that for example, one developer develops they change the data model. They add fields. For example, they add sensitive fields.
There's no encapsulation. So if someone changes the database and they have, let's say, JPA Buddy, this data is immediately visible via the REST interface and can break other clients.
Yes.
If you're adding stuff, no problem. If you're removing stuff, you're breaking really the contract.
Breaking clients is not a problem. Exposing too much data.
Both is a problem. Breaking clients and exposing data, both is a problem.
Normally, you can catch it. You can catch it before you go to production.
But if
you break something, it's good.
But if you have, JPA Buddy, which would always generate the DTO to the entity, completely transparent, we have the same problem because every change in the entity will be reflected in DTO automatically.
No. You do it by hand.
Yeah, so but if you, let's say, do it by hand is okay, but if it would be automatically, I saw projects,
it's not automatically in JPA,
but if it were automatically, then it's pointless. It is pointless. But if you have to approve it, it's fine. But
basically, it's your intention. I'm saying, like, I'm adding. So how it actually happens? You have many DTOs for the same entity for different reasons, and then you add one more field, and you say, I want to propagate this field to a number of DTOs. They show you the list of DTOs that you have for this entity. And you can click, saying this, I want this to place here, there, and there.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, but this is
your decision.
Yeah. And if your decision is always everything, then it's not dry.
Yeah, it's not right.
Yeah, exactly. This is perfect. Yeah, perfect. Pointless. Where people can find you on the internet?
Twitter, for example.
Yeah. JPA Buddy, right?
JPA Buddy or Alexei Stukalov. You can find me there. Instagram, Facebook, pretty much everywhere.
I will put this to the show notes, all the data. And we have a nice Discord server called Airhacks. So I will put also the link to the show notes. And Alex is there, JPA. So if you have questions, you can go there and we have a discussion. I am there. And lots of other people are there. This is a nice community already.
Let's do it another way. First 10 who request free license for JPA Buddy for 10 months, we're going to give them out.
Oh, very good. So if someone would like to have a JPA Buddy license, ping Alex on Discord server and or his Twitter, Discord server. Then you get the nice license from him, and then you can decide whether it is dry or not. Right?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. It was fun.
It was absolutely a pleasure for me. I had to stay home today because of like a reason that my kids also stood home because They didn't go to the kindergarten today. And
No problem.
it
So
was,
now the kids are also part of the podcast. So thank you a lot.
yeah, I mean, like for me, it was probably the best babysitting I ever had. Thank you very much.
Thank you.